in that, I came to a company that needed some help on the culture side. And, if anything, I'm very much an empathetic leader. I'm very low ego, and I think it comes across that I'm low ego, and I make it so that I'm entirely approachable. I reach out to people in the organization probably 4 to 5 times a week and just ask to jump on Zoom with me, and we talk about them as people. We talk about what they're working and how we're doing. I have a question I always ask them. I say, I don't know, I can't fix what I don't know is broken. And so please tell me what you think might need some fixing or is broken. And I make it a safe place for, people always wondering, the CEO wants to talk to me. What do I need to prepare? And literally in the invite it says you need to prepare nothing. It's just a conversation.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today, we're going to talk about continuous engagement inside of our company. If you had a culture of continuous engagement, you would have people that are solving problems, being proactive. They were growing. They are working on themselves. They are aligned with the strategy and the vision of the company and so many other things. But the reality is most companies don't have that. And so today we talk with the CEO of BetterWorks. They're a platform that helps people create continuous engagement, but also we really dive into how do they create it from a leadership standpoint. Doug Dennerline is that CEO, and Doug and I were really talking about the details of continuous engagement and really kind of diving into his core leadership principles that drive the success. A couple of them that I want to highlight for you is leadership is top down. I know a lot of people look at these things differently, but if the top people aren't willing to be good leaders, you'll probably never have the kind of company that performs well, that you love to work at, and that makes the impact that you want to. So it takes, others working from the bottom up, but you've got to really have great leadership for any company that's making any kind of success and innovation inside this world. Another principle in this is he talks about his empathetic leadership, and it shines through in the stories he tells and what he values as a leader. It's not just about the KPIs, it's about creating a safe space for people. And how do you do that? Well, you want to lean into this episode, learn a little bit more about those aspects, and I can't wait to share it with you. My name is Gene Hammett. I'm an executive coach. We do leadership development. We really focus on working with companies that have a huge opportunity in front of them. Many of our clients have been on the Inc. 5000. They want to make the list next year. That's a big opportunity. But most of our clients are chasing something even bigger than that. And so if you want to make sure you're fully optimized and aligned to meet that challenge, that big goal, then you want to make sure that you have your plan right, you've prioritized this, you've even addressed the blind spots. I say all this because we've got tools that we use over the last 12 years that help companies that are facing these big opportunities to meet those challenges and to overcome them and to meet new growth levels. And so that really is something I'd love to do with you if you're open to it. So send me an email, gene@genehammett.com. My promise to you is not to sell you anything, but to actually serve you. Identify the blind spots that are getting in the way, identify the priorities that you may not even know are a priority as you move forward. I can give you the plan, you can run with it, and we can just be friends. If you want help, if you want to do this a little bit faster, then my team is aligned to do this for you, and I'd love to do that. Just send me an email, gene@genehammett.com. Now, get ready for the interview with Doug. Doug, how are you?
I'm good, Gene. How are you?
I am fantastic. We're going to have a great interview today on the podcast. Before we dive into that, tell us about your company, BetterWorks.
Yeah. So, Gene, what we are is a little background. One of my previous roles, I was the president of a company called Success Factors in the human capital management space. And we're in that same space decades later, or a couple decades later. And we're trying to basically redo the entire performance process around managing people and around managing talent, and make it something that is, not backwards looking, not once a year, twice a year, but ongoing active conversations between manager and individual contributor. It's agreed on goal setting. It's checking in on goals that matter, then they're aligned to the company. And it's basically building a relationship that people look forward to on the HR performance side versus something that people used to, universally hate.
And you said all that without saying that it's a technology, I think. It's a SaaS platform. Is that correct?
It is a SaaS platform, correct? It's a software application. It's multiple software applications.
And I know you've done some interviews around AI and maybe in the talent of this. Where do you see AI coming into playing as a tool that we use inside of our companies?
So I'm all about it, Gene. It's a very impactful technology, and I've been around long enough to see things like, literally going back to PCs being invented in the World Wide Web and all of that. This one's substantial. If you think about it, we're using it both in our company and in our product. But in our product, it's actually really interesting, Gene, around helping managers be better managers. It basically, when you're giving somebody ongoing feedback or scheduled feedback or having a quarterly conversation, you can ask the AI to help assist you after you've written some feedback for someone. It'll remove bias. It'll make the language professionally written. It'll make it actionable. And so it really takes a manager and helps them give feedback that's relevant. It also protects the company from not giving feedback they shouldn't give to someone. And then it also, in our application, shows what we changed and why. So it's also educating the manager on what changes were made.
I love that. I know that we've used it internally as we do 360-degree feedback with managers and leaders. And we've used it to take 50 interviews and make them usable across and look at patterns across even a company.
Yeah. The difference for me in the HR space, though, Gene, is we have a private LLM. Therefore, you're not out using ChatGPT and putting all this private information into a publicly trained cloud.
Yeah, we do private LLMs too. The language models, if anyone's not following up with all the AI, but I wanted to touch base with that because I know you've done some elements of that and knew that was in the product. And I wanted to see where it was going from your perspective. I want to switch gears for us, Doug. I do a lot of interviews with CEOs of companies that are fast growth companies, and they wouldn't get there without the people. Tell me a little bit about the culture that you've created at BetterWorks.
Yeah, Gene, I'm actually really proud of it. In that, I came to a company that needed some help on the culture side. And, if anything, I'm very much an empathetic leader. I'm very low ego, and I think it comes across that I'm low ego, and I make it so that I'm entirely approachable. I reach out to people in the organization probably 4 to 5 times a week and just ask to jump on Zoom with me. And we talk about them as people. We talk about what their work and how we're doing. I have a question I always ask them. I say, I don't know. I can't fix what I don't know is broken. And so please tell me what you think might need some fixing or is broken. And I make it a safe place for, people always wondering, the CEO wants to talk to me. What do I need to prepare? And literally in the invite, it says you need to prepare nothing. It's just a conversation. And so we're constantly, and all the leaders I bring on the team, I tell them, if I found out you're a passive aggressive personality, we're not going to last together. I'm too far into my career. I want people that have their head down, want to do well, have a voice in the company, please voice. I tell people, if you're in a meeting, you don't talk, you didn't need to be there, right? And so it's one of the sayings internally. So I try to create a culture that is open, it's transparent. You can be your authentic self here. I appreciate being your authentic self. If you're all about business and never about anything but business, I find you pretty boring pretty fast.
I do a lot of interviews on Monday, and I've had a couple already today, and I appreciate you being here to share your insights. And there's been a common theme here. You weren't in those other interviews, so you don't know, so I'll share it with you. The importance of understanding the people at a people level, like a personal level. Yeah. Did you get that from your career in Silicon Valley, or did this something you picked up in your own journeys as a leader?
I have worked for a couple of people that I have an immense amount of respect for. My first job in Silicon Valley was working for Hewlett Packard. And this was back when it was Hewlett and Packard and the HP way. And people were treated with an immense amount of respect at all levels. And actually, the wild part of that, my college roommate's dad was a senior executive at Hewlett Packard, why I got a job there. And I used to go skiing with, the leadership of HP, and they were just my friends' dads. They weren't these leaders of this incredible company. So I don't know. I've always approached people in leadership in now selling at Cisco, calling on Fortune 1,000. People are people, and they're either, they get up like we do every day and try to do a good job. And I think I just have always treated people like that and like to create people around me that treat people like that. And so it's just kind of always been who I am.
I want to go back to something you said earlier, Doug. I know you came in as a CEO of this company. You weren't a founder. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I don't want you to air the dirty laundry, so you can tell me that this is off limits, but you said that the culture wasn't where we needed to be. What are some of the high level elements of culture that were not working before you started?
Well, again, Gene, the company had gone through a public event that was pretty hurtful to the people in the company.
Okay.
And, okay, so it took some rebuilding and rebuilding trust, and over the course of time, we've been able to do that.
When you look at rebuilding trust, and because that's a really big one, if trust is broken between people, they're not sharing their
Yeah.
ideas, they're not, putting in the extra work to overcome things, they're not bringing up problems that they're afraid to because they don't trust anybody's
Okay.
going to have their best interest. What were your steps to rebuild trust in this organization?
Yeah, there's no question. It's a matter of making people understand by demonstrating it when you're we doing this through the pandemic too, Gene. So, I have to admit, I am the ex-CEO of WebEx. And so the founder of Zoom, Eric Yuan, was my technical guy. So I took a pandemic to teach the world that you can run a company over this technology.
Yeah.
I thought you could have done it 10 years ago when I was running WebEx. But I made it so that I would ask people, they would ask me questions and they saw my honest answers, and I made it a safe place to give me difficult feedback, and people got to demonstrate, and not just me, my leadership team. I hire people, not just like me. I have a lot of gender on my team, a lot of ethnicity on my team, and those matter to me. I have 3 daughters. And so that matters to me. And so I created an environment that people learned that it was safe to do. And now it's real because people bring it up all the time.
Now, Doug's been talking about rebuilding trust, and I wanted to jump in here because I wanted to make sure you understood where I stand, and maybe I have a bias. I wrote a book with my wife called How to Have Tough Conversations. If you're looking on the video, I'm going to hold it up. You can see it on the neon sign behind me. I love the use of this tool when it comes to rebuilding trust. I actually think that there's no way to rebuild trust if you're not willing to have the tough conversations. And so this gives you the courage to do it. This gives you the framework to do it well and effectively, and to fill in some of the gaps that a lot of people miss inside these tough conversations. And so if you are curious about that, you can buy it where you buy books online. You can buy it at bookstores, but mostly through like Barnes & Noble and Amazon, I think even Walmart. Make sure you check it out. We have Audible, we have all the prints. So I really want to stress to you, every leader has to be willing to have the tough conversations. And this is the playbook that you want to follow. Now back to Doug. I know that Google had done some deep research on what makes high performing teams perform. And I don't know if you've seen the same research. It's a little bit, maybe it's 10 years old now, but psychological safety was the number one element behind that. Are you familiar with the research?
I am, and I'm a fan of Kim Scott too, and radical candor. It's kind of all about that. Is people know that you're coming from an authentic place and trying to help them, not just trying to be critical.
Yeah. When you have seen other leaders, I know you can look back in your past. We don't need to drop any certain names or anything, or you can even look at where you're currently working. How do you coach someone to create that safe space for their team as a leader?
Yeah, when you work directly for me, you learn very quickly that, we have an open, honest relationship, and that I get people instant feedback on things that I see that I think, they could probably do better at. And I'm very conscious about how I give that feedback. I've always had this thing where and maybe it's old school, but it certainly has worked for me. It's I start with something positive, and let them know that I'm thankful for them and their work and what they're doing here. And I had this observation and I thought I'd pass it by you. And then if it's something that's more critical than that, then I'll give them very specific examples of it. And I try to do that every time and talk about how you might have done something differently than the way that you had you thought about that. One thing comes to my mind, Gene, and I've done this with lots of people, and this is from somebody giving me this feedback long ago in my own career, was when you have a statement to make, turn your statement into a question.
Yeah.
And versus saying, I think, try to turn that statement into a question. It's very insightful when you lead with a question, you understand where someone's coming from versus, make an observation or accuse them of something that they did, not knowing the reason they might have done it. And that's worked well for me with people in my career.
Now, Doug just mentioned something. Take a statement and turn it into a question. What that really does for you is it changes the involvement, engagement of that person. This whole episode is on continuous engagement. And if you have statements as a leader, they may be elegant, they may be sharp, they may be compelling, but they'll never be more powerful than the right question. The right question allows the person to think for themselves, to lean into that decision, to address what's getting in the way, or to describe what their next move is. If you tell them what their next move is, there's a lower level of ownership of that versus if they say it themselves. I've learned this the hard way. I've noticed it within my own coaching, with my own clients over the last 12 plus years. And so if you want to be a better leader, take the statement that you're thinking in your head and turn it into a question and then see what happens. And if you do that 2 or 3 times in every conversation, you'll find you're having a better conversation. It's richer. It's very, trust building, and people will take ownership of that work, and you will be seen as a better leader. Back to Doug. When you think about your own leadership principles, I know you mentioned empathetic leader, but what really guides you to be the leader that you've become today?
Well, I love what I do. And I love the space that we're in. When you think about the fact that we create an application that actually makes it increases engagement scores for companies, it lowers turnover. It solves some of the problems you're talking about, Gene, that people have in companies around creating conversations. So our application, you have to talk to your employees, and employees have to talk to you on an ongoing basis. I mean, our average users in our product from every 3 to 5 days versus an annual performance review, you're forced to talk to your manager once or twice a year. So it creates this conversation template, if you will, forcing conversations between people. And I think just having that conversation creates some opportunity for it to get a two-way thing going.
I know you mentioned that your product does engagement, but you believe in fostering a culture of continuous engagement.
I do.
How would you guide another leader to do that if you didn't have the software you have?
Yeah,
I know that supports it.
Well, you have to be out there. You have to be constant. The whole series in life about management by wandering around. I'm a big believer in. I mean, you have to have time and set up with people that is not about work. It's about what's going on in life and making sure you understand what's going on in people's life, and what can they give you and how can they give you their best self when you need to understand what's going on at home. That's been really important to me in lots of ways. We are thoughtful about what we ask of people. During the pandemic, we were giving people every other Friday off to deal with family issues and things that needed to be taken care of. We were only letting people do 2 half-hour Zooms, trying to do everything in a half hour in Zoom, and then taking 30 minutes to not Zoom, and so that you can get some time away from this technology. And so I think when you do all of those things, you create an environment that people know that you are looking out in their best interest.
I do want to switch gears for you, Doug, because I don't know what kind of data you guys have, but I know you've got thousands of users and you're making an impact with companies. When you look at the data at a macro level, what are the common themes that you find around engagement or safety that you could share with us today?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's really evident when we implement software for all these different companies to go in and kind of look at where they're at culturally. And you can really see very quickly the companies that really need the help that they'll get with something that we do. And I guess, Gene, I'm also a big believer that well-run companies start with the leadership. It's got to be demonstrated at the top. It can't be, one of the things I tell my sales team here, Gene, is if the head of HR reports to anywhere but the CEO, don't bother calling on them, because that's the CEO not caring enough about their people that they want to tuck this function into some other area of the company. To me, people are, you said it earlier, it's the most important asset in a company in today's world. And if you're not 100% thinking about your people every day and how to optimize what they do for you every day, then, and you can do that by having a really great HR person, who will hold a mirror to you saying, hey, the leadership you have is not getting it done, or this person needs some help and this person needs some help. You need somebody that you can trust that can really point out where those areas of concern could be that you need to pay attention to. And then it all starts at the top. It's a matter of, people that care about people, bringing people in that think the same way, then you'll get a culture of people that care about people, and then you'll get performance. We see in companies where, again, we'll see between 10 and 20 points of increases in engagement scores we'll see 10 to 15% improvement in confidence in leadership. We see a big improvement in understanding the strategy of the organization because people are tying goals to top company goals, and they're tying their goals to things that help the company grow. And I don't know, there's a stat out there, Gene, that says 78% of people in a company don't know how their work helps their company achieve what it's trying to achieve. With applications like ours, it really gets people aligned around a common goal, which I also think creates, a level of belonging that you don't otherwise have.
Fantastic here. I now know why you started out with empathetic leader. I can hear it in your voice and the depth that you take to take care of your people. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you feel like is important to this, fostering a culture of continuous engagement?
No, I mean, one of my favorite stories to close things off, Gene, is, one of the best people in the world at this was John Chambers when he was running Cisco for 28 consecutive years. His mom and dad were doctors. And he got very involved if one of his 70,000 employees had a medical issue, to the point where at one point he had an employee who had a brain tumor they were telling him was inoperable. And he got the 4 best brain surgeons on the planet on a phone call, sent the MRI to them, and convinced one of them to do the surgery. And that person's around today because of John's involvement. And, those kinds of stories go a long ways in driving engagement in an organization in a very meaningful way.
Well, it's a great place to end. I do believe that our leaders, it starts at the top, and that you have to continuously evolve to be a leader as your company evolves. I know that you've done this through different experiences you've had with companies you've been at and have led. So thanks for being here, Doug, and sharing your wisdom.
Appreciate the time, Gene.
I love interviews like this with people that are in the trenches and really shining a light on what great leadership looks like. And so if you're listening to all this and you're like, we're not quite at that level yet, it's okay. You are where you are, and I'd love to help you figure out what's standing in your way to create the kind of leadership and the culture that you want to create a high performance inside your organization. I've been doing this for more than a decade. If I can help you in any way, send me an email, gene@genehammett.com. When you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.